Shabbat Shalom, my name is Ezra Balser. This week's Parsha is Tisa, which tells a very famous story of the golden calf. But I think there's a parallel here to the Joseph story, which the Midrash Tanchuma points out, which I think is a really interesting way to look at the story in terms of leadership. So if we remember back to the Joseph story, we remember that when the brothers plotted to get rid of Joseph, they were going to sell. They were either going to kill him or sell him. And Reuben had this idea that they would put him in the pit, and he would come back later and save him. And he didn't tell anybody else that was his plan, but he had this grand vision that he would make everything okay. And in the end, we know that didn't happen. That the brothers, they actually sat down to eat a meal while Reuben was out doing whatever he was doing. And over that meal, things got worse, and Joseph gets sold into slavery. And there's a similar thing that happens here in our Parsha in Tisa, where Aaron is asked to build this golden calf. And our tradition tells us that he was kind of reluctant about this process, but did it because he thought there was a better solution around the corner. So he did it to slow things down. He thought this was the best alternative. So he created this golden calf and said, tomorrow we're going to do this thing, this what we know is a bad thing, is idol worship. And in the meantime, the Israelites actually sat down and had a meal, and then the next day they went out and they did this idol worship, which is an evil thing, and we don't do that. So I think there's a couple of parallels here. That we have these leaders that understood that what they were doing was wrong, but they thought that there was a lesser evil or a better opportunity or a better chance, and so they went that way, and it actually did not turn out well. And I think what we can learn from that is that sometimes the right thing is the right thing, and there's no middle ground. And that when we know that something's wrong, we have to stand up and say that that is wrong, and not say, well, what can I do to stop the situation today and make it a little worse, and make it a little better. But we actually have to make it right from the beginning. And then the other lesson, I think, is that when we don't want to give time for people to think about whether or not they want to do bad things. In both cases, in the Joseph story, they had time. They ate a meal while thinking about what to do with Joseph, and arrived at a very bad conclusion. And the same thing with the Israelites near Sinai. They had an entire meal and thought about whether or not they wanted to do idol worship, and they did it. So I think we can learn here that when there are bad ideas going around, we need to cut them off at the beginning. And we see this all the time in our real life, and whether or not it's our friends making mistakes or we see bullying at school, these are not things that we should be saying, oh, maybe there's a little step, but we actually have to stand up and do the right thing right there in the right moment. I think that's what we learn here in Tisa. Shabbat Shalom.